In this series, we're going to review suspension setup. A common misconception with newer riders is it's close enough. In reality, the less experience you have in the sport, the more important that your bike is set up in a proper range. This allows you to simply learn to ride the trail, not ride the trail, and compensate for poor performance. To simplify the concepts, we're using an animation to exaggerate the actions. You're going to begin with setting up sag. Sag is how deep into the travel your bike sits when loaded with your riding weight in a neutral riding position. In motorsports, this is also called droop. Most modern bikes are designed to sit approximately 30% into the sag. This gives the bike a nice balance of compliance, grip, and pedaling platform. Forks tend to be in the 20 to 25% range. The more aggressive you're riding, generally the less sag you will set up. Too much sag and the bike will tend to wallow when climbing, loses efficiency, and may use too much travel for the conditions. With too much sag, you also lose support from the suspension in fast corners and burly terrain. Brake dive increases in the fork with too little support. Too little sag, and the bike tends to ride harsh and may even pedal less efficiently. They're designed to sit into an ideal drivetrain alignment, and if you have too little sag, it can actually sit too tall and pedal less efficiently than with a little more sag. With too little sag, you will find compromised traction and trail tracking. One way to get into the ballpark quickly on sag is to measure the stroke and sag, then use an algebraic calculation. This is also great if you're quickly setting up a bike for a quick drop for your buddy. Known PSI divided by remaining stroke is equal to the new PSI over the desired stroke. Note, if you use the sag stroke, not the remaining stroke, your calculation will take you backwards. It's easiest to check sag with the help of a friend or a wall if you're comfortable. I find it best to sit on the front wheel to support a rider when working with sag. Some like to simply hold the handlebars. First, make sure that any compression levers are in the open setting. Mount the bike in your attack or home, or basically your descending position. Pump the suspension a couple times and let it settle. Then push the travel rings down to review. Note how deep the bike is sitting in its travel. After you set the sag, you're going to look at rebound and compression damping. The basics of hydraulic damping are pretty simple. Your suspension is more complex, but for ease of explanation, to control shaft input or output speed, a non-compressible fluid, i.e. something with no air in it, is moved between two vessels connected by a port. The larger the openings between the vessels, the faster the fluid transfers, so the faster the shaft can move. Smaller openings slow the transfer and slow the shaft speed. I set rebound first. Rebound adjusts the shaft speed out or back into the neutral position. Proper rebound is set based on rider speed. Too slow of rebound and it will pack up, meaning the shock sits deeper and deeper into the travel. This creates a harsh ride as the air pressure ramp is more substantial deeper in the travel. When your rebound is too fast, the bike will feel jittery and skip across the trail. I ride with my fork and rear shock rebound fairly balanced. Pedal the bike and bounce while in your riding position. Compression controls the shaft speed opposite of rebound, slowing the shaft into the shock body under load. We will go into that in more depth in another episode, where we'll also look at air volume spacing to change the ramp rate, as well as high and low speed controls for rebound and compression. Something important to remember when you set your bike up. When you test ride the bike and bounce in your attack position, the fork should feel as stiff or stiffer than the rear shock. The fork should never feel softer than the rear end. That will tend to bury the bike in holes and increase your odds of going over the bars. The more aggressive you ride, the stiffer you want your suspension, but also the stiffer you want your fork in comparison to the rear shock to help keep you floating up and over, not burying into the terrain. If you're watching on YouTube, follow the link to see the other episodes on MTB Suspension Setup from BikeCo.com.